Hey guys, how you doing? So I found this interesting article that somebody sent to me, and let's just jump into it. U.S. companies increasingly eliminate college degrees as a requirement amid out-of-control school cost. One report projected that 1.4 million jobs could be opened to those without degrees over the next 5 years. Now, this is something I've been predicting for quite a while. We're starting to see it more and more and more in coding, but it seems to be spreading outside of just software development. So let's just read a few pieces and I'll give you my comments. American businesses are increasingly eliminating college degrees as part of their requirements for corporate roles, which is part of a wider trend in the U.S. job market that is de-emphasizing the value of a four-year diploma, according to experts. I talked about this a few years ago, where Google, Apple, and other companies have noticed that there was no performance difference between somebody with a degree or not working for them. And in fact, Google went on to say, if you wanted to become a software developer, don't go to college or university. Google thought, it was a waste of time. American companies like Walmart, IBM, Accenture, Bank of America, and Google have announced plans to reduce the number of jobs that require college degrees. Michael Gibson, venture capitalist and author of the book Paper Belt on Fire, is a proponent of alternatives to the higher education system in the United States and described the trend as promising, especially given the $1.6 trillion in student loan debt. So Michael Gibson is not the only big name capitalist out there is talking about this type of venture capitalist. Well, Elon Musk said years ago that he doesn't care about degrees.
There's no need even to have a college degree at all, or even high school. If somebody graduated from a great university, that may be an indication that they will be capable of great things, but it's not necessarily the case. If you look at, say, people like Bill Gates or Larry Ellison, Steve Jobs, these guys didn't graduate from college. But if you had a chance to hire them, of course, that would be a good idea.
What's the other point? $1.6 trillion U.S. student debt. I have to ask a question. If a institution knowingly puts essentially kids into debt servitude, because if you don't know, in North America at least, if you go into student loan debt, this debt cannot be discharged through bankruptcy, meaning this is a debt that sticks with you your entire life. Whereas if, let's say, you start a business and the business goes bust, you declare bankruptcy, you start off at zero. That's painful. But it's not nearly as painful being stuck or saddled with a debt until the day you die or until you pay it off. So, so I've always had issue with that. I had at some point some student loan debt, but I worked my butt off to pay it off as quickly as possible because I knew that it was lifelong debt, so I didn't want to have anything to do with that. I think that has hobbled the passions and dreams of a lot of people, he said. I think that's why we see political struggle to cancel the debt. But the most aggravating part is that everyone's paying attention to the poor students who are billed, but no one is blaming the universities themselves for teaching worthless things or not providing the sort of career advice they should. He added, the more we see people foregoing that system to start a career, the better. Walmart, for example, has eliminated college degrees as a requirement for hundreds of its corporate roles, vowing to remove unnecessary barriers that prevent career advancement. The company has announced it would waive the university degree as a necessity if candidates can show they have gained the necessary skills based on different prior experience. So, let me comment on that. In terms of software development, I've been saying this for years and years and years and years. I've been doing this since the 90s. A degree is worth this much, and real-world demonstrable experience is worth this much. So what I have people do in my bootcamp mentoring program is once they get past the fundamentals of coding and development, I have them get into real projects as quickly as possible. You got to get into the ring, to use an analogy, and start building real things. You being able to demonstrate that you've built actual projects, even simple projects, makes you infinitely more valuable as a prospective developer working for a company. There's no question about that. Now, for freelance, in case you're wondering, degrees and accreditations and all this stuff is even less important. Even less important in the freelance space. In the freelance space, if they hire you, they couldn't care less if you had a degree or not. All they're going to want to see from you is demonstrable skills coupled with professionalism on your part, which part of that means great communication skills. Between 2017 and 2019, about 46% of middle skill occupations and 31% of high skill occupations saw a drop in college degree requirements, which could have a major implications for how employees find talent and open up opportunities for 2/3 of Americans without college education. According to a report from the Burning Glass Institute, in line with the trend, the report projected the move could open up 1.4 million jobs for American workers without college degrees over the next 5 years. At the government level, states across the country have removed degree requirements for government jobs, according to the Brookings Institution. Virginia became the 13th state to remove such requirements in June. Apple TV's 2-Minute Drill co-host and National Business Capital CEO and founder Joe Cambirato told Fox News Digital that he was not surprised to see big-name companies drop degree requirements. He suggested that a large demand for employees combined with different views on college requirements by newer generations has likely contributed to the shift. I saw an article a couple of years ago in Forbes magazine. If you don't know, Forbes is a pretty well-known business mag. And they were talking about online learning, something I've been involved with for a long time now. And they noted how some of the Ivy League schools were starting to go to online learning. And what they found is that the Ivy League schools offering online learning, they were essentially offering the same curriculum, same programs as the brick and mortar students for $1,000 a year as opposed to $50,000 a year. And in the Forbes article, they noted that these universities had to do it because they had to compete with people like me who were offering high level of education for a fraction of the cost. And they also noted that they had to, so the author of the article noted that these Ivy League schools had to do that due to market forces. And he said, in the end, though, it was going to destroy their business model, their primary business model, because as soon as employers began to recognize that there was no difference between people learning online versus people learning in the schools, they would start hiring those people. So the value and the cachet of those $50,000 a year educational institutions was going to diminish, plummet. And in fact, I saw a report put out a couple of years ago by a think tank, more than a few years ago, where they were predicting this. It was a report put together by this think tank that basically sold this report to a bunch of higher educational institutions, schools. And they said, listen, the business model was going to change. The culture was changing. They were realizing that higher education was not all that it cracked up to be. So you better change your business model. I'm starting to hear that up here in Canada. We got a couple of major universities up here, and they're starting to feel the effects of that. Students around the world are starting to realize, is it really worth all this money and the years to do this? What's really interesting about this, we have known for decades, that much of what you learn in university has very little to do, has nothing to do in many respects, with regards to the job you actually have to do. So you may get a degree in computer science, and everything you learn there, a lot of it won't be applicable to real world. You may get a degree in engineering. That's a common one, engineering. A lot of people I know who are engineers. They said nothing they learned in school had anything to do with what they actually did in the field. Yes, there are exceptions, but this is very common. It's a common thing. So this is in the STEM field, this science, tech, the technology end of things. When you get into the softer disciplines, if you're going to call it that, the economics and the psychology and the sociology and the basket weaving studies and the women studies and the anthropology, those things have absolutely nothing to do with real world. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I took an anthropology class as an elective in university, and I found it to be extremely useful. Not directly useful, but extremely useful. Now, was it worth the cost of doing this in university? No. Especially, back then, universities had a big advantage just prior to the internet being, widespread. Back then, they had They had, the universities had the monopoly, or not in a monopoly, but they had a lot of, their big value was their source. They had big libraries, big sources of knowledge, right? And they had teachers and experts who could guide you and so on. Those days are over, because you can do this online now. You can find people like me who have been in industry for a long time, who online can lead you in the right direction. So you got YouTube videos and so on and so forth. So you can find all this information. The big advantage that the universities once had, their libraries, is gone. It's like a relic of the past. What they don't realize, I think, the schools, is that they are suffering the same fate that newspapers have suffered over the last 20 years. And what is that fate? The newspapers forgot why newspapers were important. They were important because it was a cheap way of accessing information. The whole printing of newspapers on cheap paper, very quick turnaround, very quick to distribute, that was the advantage of the newspaper. That was the technological advantage. Easy, cheap access to information. They forgot that. And so when the internet came out, and Google especially came out, that basically killed the business model of the newspapers, because that big advantage, the cheap distribution of information, was replaced by a far cheaper way of distributing information. That was, of course, the internet, the web. So universities are faced with a very similar situation where their once big advantage, their libraries, their exclusive access to elite individuals, it's gone now. With Amazon and the web and YouTube, all this information is accessible. So all you need now is to access experienced people to guide you in terms of what's important, what's not important, and how to get there more quickly. So, training under somebody like me, where you're able to work at your pace and work in the amount of hours you need to work, you're not confined to a particular schedule. Some people work full time, some people have kids, whatever. This is hugely advantageous over the traditional college model or university model, where you have to go in, you have to show up at certain classes and all this kind of nonsense. Yeah, so the universities, they still haven't realized that their one big advantage was access to knowledge is gone. It's gone. So, yeah. In his book, Paper Belt on Fire, Gibson challenges the educational establishment, promoting stories that support his beliefs that a college degree is not necessary for a fulfilling and successful career. Elon Musk, amongst others, would agree with that. There are lots of things you can do without a college degree, explained. Starting companies is easy because you are your own boss, so you don't need to prove your skill set. You just need to make something people want. We are starting to see more and more companies, Google and others, who are now questioning the worth of a college degree, he added. Is there any more to this article? Here we go. The cost of a college degree has skyrocketed in recent years in conjunction with the millions of Americans who are burdened with thousands of dollars of debt, which has prompted corporations to switch so-called skills-based hiring methods. Entrepreneur Ted Jenkins told Fox News Digital that a proven track record of success and real-world experience is becoming more of a focal point in today's business society. Anyway, I will link to this article. Gibson attributes the trend to the fact that employers are able to more easily measure skill of potential hires. He said this trend is especially prevalent in tech roles like computer engineering, where a prospective employee is able to showcase their coding skills on a repository called GitHub and other places, which acts as a portfolio that coders can shop it around, helping them get hired independently of credentials. Even though the value, okay, let me just comment on that. Again, people who've been watching my channel know I've been saying this for years. Demonstrable skills, portfolio site, GitHub, but most importantly, real-world project ability. Because as I mentioned in other videos, the second thing that hiring managers look for when they're evaluating candidates for software development roles and probably everything else is your ability to communicate. Can you communicate well? Do you have good interpersonal skills? That's why I put together the Lizard Wizard course for people in the mentoring program. It's also that course is available to the public as well. Why? Because I found that most people, their major problem was not intellectual. Most people can code. Most people can build apps and websites and so on and provide those services, which are still in growing demand. The biggest problem they have is interpersonal skills, which is all rooted in the lizard brain, by the way. Anyway, let's go on. Even though value of college degrees decreasingly rapidly because companies can so easily verify prospective employee skills in less traditional ways, Gibson admitted that there are some jobs and career tracks that still find a 4-year career valuable. Yeah, so in areas where there are intangibles or where a company, they're looking, that's a bad sentence, they're looking for people who are conformist, willing to finish a long 4-year project and take assignments and get them done, show up on time and all that. That's what college does for the labor market. It filters out people who can't do things and people who can. That's an old joke, but it's true. People who graduate from college demonstrate to prospective employers they know how to toe the line. Anyway, you can demonstrate your professionalism through ways I talk about completing a few freelance projects for free or otherwise, for a small business, for a nonprofit, having a professional presentation on your portfolio site or on your GitHub, just conducting yourself well, not wearing hoodies in your photos when you're promoting yourself. I'm just joking around. See, I can wear a hoodie because I pay the bills. So there you go. I hope that's useful. This is something I've been talking about for a while now. As people know who've been following my channel, I said degrees are becoming less and less and less important, and I believe they will continue to lose their importance over time. There is huge cost to getting a 4-year degree, and it's not just the money that you outlay if you're paying for a degree, it's also the time. As Google points out, you don't need to spend 4 years learning how to code. In fact, you can go from zero to getting an entry-level job in months if you are disciplined and you follow a right training program. That's it. In all fairness and transparency, I do have a mentoring program. You can check it out here, UncleSteph.com. I also have solo learn on your own courses, if you will. Depends if you want the support and the coaching sessions. Check out the mentoring program, my bootcamp. But on the other hand, if you feel comfortable learning on your own, then you can check out my unique interactive training courses. They are totally different from anything else, and you'll see that they are pedagogically sound, and they're also built from a point of view of somebody who's been in the game for decades. So I teach you what you need to know to get up and running. PDQ, pretty darn quick.